Hello everyone. Today we are going to deal with Mario Klarer's poetry. Mario Klarer is an associate professor of English and American Studies at the University of Innsbruck. And her particular essay poetry, it is taken from her work An Introduction to Literary Studies. An Introduction to Literary Studies provides the beginner with accessible and comprehensive survey of literature. She provides easy to understand descriptions of a variety of approaches to text. She systematically explains theory, genre, and literary history. This text also helps to understand more about fiction, poetry, drama, and film. Today's video discusses her particular essay poetry, which says about the evolution of poetry. Or rather, we can say it gives the history of poetry. As you know, poetry is one of the oldest genres in literary history. And when we consider the evolution of it, we can see these earliest examples go back to ancient Greek literature. In spite of this long tradition, it is harder to define than any other genre. And when we consider the particular word poetry, we can see this word poetry, it is closely related to the term lyric, which originates from the Greek word for the musical instrument lyra, that is lyre or harp. So this particular point shows its origin in the sphere of music. In ancient times and the Middle Ages, minstrels recited poetry while playing musical instruments like the lyre. And this particular term, poetry, it comes from the Greek word poiou, which means to make or to produce. And actually, this word, it indicates that the poet is the person who makes verse. Or we can say the poet is the creator of verse. Now we can see the traditional definitions of poetry. As we know, most traditional definitions try to give a definition for poetry by juxtaposing poetry with prose. So the majority of these definitions are limited to characteristics such as verse, rhyme, and meter, which are actually traditionally regarded as the classical elements that distinguish poetry from prose. So, when we consider these criteria, however, are already problematic with respect to the traditional epic, and it's quite difficult to apply to modern prose poetry or experimental poetry. So, when we consider this criteria, these criteria, traditional criteria, as we said, it is quite difficult. We cannot apply this to all forms of poetry, such as epic poetry, modern prose poetry, experimental poetry. And when we analyze the definitions of poetry, the more inclusive definitions of poetry, we can see how they are giving consideration to the linguistic elements like word choice, syntactic structure, rhetorical figures. So, these linguistic elements can also be found in other genres like drama or fiction, and it also complicates the definition of poetry. So, despite these challenges, the combination of verse, language, and structure helps outline the main qualities associated with poetry. And Mario Clarer gives the two major categories of poetry, that is narrative and lyric poetry, which can be dealt in the next video. Thank you.